These are Ewoks, and I printed this miniature from McNulty Miniatures a long time ago. And while the prints turned out great, and I had a blast painting them, I never had a proper way to display them, so they've been collecting dust on a bar cart in my living room. What a waste. So this week, I'm making them a terrarium display with LED lights and live plants, using materials repurposed from previous projects. We'll be designing a lid, so first we need to get the outside dimensions. Alright, now that that's measured, I went and found a piece of wood that's going to be suitable dimensions to make the lid. This is a piece of 1x pine that had been a shelf in one of my closets. But I think it's going to work just fine. So we'll get this thrown on the planer and clean it up, and then we'll be ready for machining. Now that the board is flat and consistent thickness, we can cut it to length and get its final measurements for the next step, computer-aided design. So the design for this is pretty simple. We're just going to do a round lid with a recess so that it sits on top and hides all of our electronics. And then we have a hole in the center for a 40 by 40 millimeter fan, a hole for a rocker switch to turn things on and off, and then a hole for a barrel jack to supply 12 volt power. In order to mount the fan and also keep all of the lines on the lid nice and round, we're going to 3D print a fan holder, and that's just going to sit on top. If we head over to the manufacture tab, we can take a look at the tool paths that I set up to machine this lid. Let's turn everything else off. First, we have a 2D adaptive path, which will route the recess and carve the holes, and then a contour path. And using tabs, I was able to have the machine cut individual vent holes along a circular path. So there's going to be 6 holes for air and humidity to escape. And then finally a contour path that will cut out the outer dimensions of the lid. And here we can watch the simulation. I always like to take a look at the simulation in Fusion 360 just to make sure that I'm going to clear all of my work holding and not run into my stock. So looks good. Now time to get our 3D printed parts done. Here's the fan holder, and we'll just print this on the A1. this first one's only going to take 30 minutes. And the second 3D printed piece is going to be the substrate barrier. And this is basically just going to be a screen that has zero top or bottom layers. It's all infill, and it's going to keep the dirt out of the bottom drainage layer. And while those are printing, we can get the machine set up. We're going to use good old super glue and masking tape for work holding. Okay, and after a brief sanding to remove some of the fuzzies, this is what we've got. A finished lid with the recess here, all of the holes and vent holes in the right locations. Gonna finish this up with some dark walnut stain. And I think that looks pretty good. So time to let this dry, and we'll finish this up tomorrow. Okay, and this is everything we need. We've got our container, our lid, got the fan and the fan holder. Our on and off switch. This is a rocker style switch with a little LED indicator on it. Our power input, which will be a 12 volt barrel jack. It's got a little retainer nut. And then finally our substrate barrier. And of course it doesn't fit. We'll deal with that later. Then our LEDs, these are leftovers from an old project, but these things are great. And then our power brick, this is going to supply our 12 volt. Via this barrel plug here. It's just going to fit in like so. Oh, perfect. That's going to make for a really clean installation. And then of course, before we go any further, I've got to test these LEDs just to make sure that all of the diodes are lighting up. And that actually looks pretty good. The second segment of this strip isn't lighting up, but the first is, so that's good enough for me. We can start cutting these and laying them out. And I'm just going to attach them to the lid using some CA glue and a little accelerant to get things to stick nice and fast. And then we'll break off the extra holding tabs here on the on and off switch and fit that in. It's a nice tight friction fit. And there we go. Got all the LEDs installed and the on and off switch and our power input. Now we just need to solder on some wires to route that electricity, and we'll start with the first one from our power input to our on and off switch. And once that's done, we'll give it a test. Excellent. Light turns on. Now we're going to just go ahead and install all of the rest of the wires. And so first we'll put a little dot of solder onto each of the pads of the LED strips. We're applying some solder to the bare ends of the wire. It's easy to just tap the solder dots. They melt instantly and you got a nice connection. And then rinse and repeat. I want to point out that my garage has very good ventilation. I had a fan going, so you definitely don't want to do this in a enclosed space because you can see all of those fumes. One quick check and we're good. Now time to trim that substrate barrier to size. And this is what we've got. Once it's all together, that looks pretty good. Ready for plan. So first we're going to put in our drainage layer here. That's just gravel, and then we'll throw in our substrate barrier on top and start adding soil. And this is a specially formulated soil for terrariums. Then we'll add our wood. We have grapevine, which is kind of a cool, craggy, somewhat alien looking. We'll add a very small pine of some sort. This is January, so I imagine this had been in stock at the store from Christmas. And then using a stick, we'll just pat down the soil and poke holes to plant the rest of our plants. These are sedums here. I'm putting in the grapevine, and then the rest of the ground cover is going to be succulents, and I'll just tap a little hole and press the root down. And hopefully when I'm done, this will resemble a miniature version of the forest moon of Endor. And lastly, I give everything a nice drink with a squirt bottle filled with filtered water. Time to introduce our Ewoks into their new home. I think that makes a great display. As always, thanks for making it this far. Please be sure to hit the like or subscribe button, and if you got something to say, drop a comment below. See you next week.